Welcome to Everything All Right, the literary talk, where today my guest is the very talented, very versatile, and amazing Annabel Abbs. And we're going to speak about her new book, Sleepless. And I have to look, Discovering the Power of the Night Self. It's such a long title, it really challenges me. The book is out now, and welcome, Annabel.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Ellen.
Well, thank you for joining. Well, Sleepless, I think we've all been there, like sort of terrorized, looking at the clock in the small hours of the night, but sort of in a dramatic reversal of attitudes. You call that moment, the night is a downy protective skin, a soft pelt in which I could lose myself. It gave me space and secrecy, silence and anonymity. Tell us about the power of the night self, Annabel.
Well, the night self is a persona that women, particularly women, have been using and investigating for a very long time. They don't typically write about it because night is really seen as sort of almost a male time. But if you go through their diaries and their journals, you will find that many of them were awake at night and often doing the sort of creative things that they didn't have time for during the day. So it was often their time, particularly women of the past. The night was their time for expressing themselves, really.
All your nonfiction is very personal. In Windswept, you discover the power of your legs after a quite serious accident. Now, Sleepless delves sort of, I suppose, into your own experiences of insomnia. Do you find it hard to open up?
Yes, I think when I started writing, I started obviously with fiction, and the thought of ever being that sharing was, I just wasn't ready for it.
It's very un-English, very un-English to be so sharing.
Yes, you're very passionate, I think you know. But as I, and it's funny, because my first three books were fiction, but as I started realizing that actually I was just delving into other people, I became more confident about not only delving into myself, but then, sharing it with the world. And after Windswept, I had so many letters. I still get about one letter or one message a week from someone who says that it's had such a huge effect on their life, and they often share their own life stories. And, I've never had that response from fiction. So there's something about memoir, particularly if you're being very candid and honest, that I think people really value and respond to in a more visceral way. It seems to touch a nerve. Because all I'm doing is articulating experiences that everybody else has had. Everybody's had an accident, everybody's had insomnia, everybody's lost parents or loved ones. These are not particular to me, they're universal. But I think the memoirist, I suppose the memoirist develops a sort of language that enables other people to find a way of expressing their own experience, their own emotions, through the language that you've given them in your memoir, if that makes sense.
Yes, that might also explain, or it might give partially an answer to my next question to you, because your oeuvre and your creation is amazingly versatile. Normally an author nowadays is told you have to create a voice, you have to create a brand, your next book has to be the same but different as the one before. But you just seem to write what you want, and you get the most amazing publishers, and you get the big US contract, and you get the book tour. I mean, the full Monty for every book, if it's historical fiction or if it's the non-fiction about very personal experiences. What's your secret?
I have to say you're absolutely right. So I will have to work with multiple publishers. That's the first thing, and that is a bit of a pain, because every publisher I work with, as you just rightly pointed out, wants me to write the next book, which is a sort of slightly amended version of the first one. They want you to stay on brand. But most writers want to experiment. Most writers want to try different genres. They want to try using language in different ways. So the thought of being just shoehorned in one, just going down one route never really appealed to me. I like the idea of, maybe one day writing a play, maybe one day writing a film script even, I write poetry now. I'd like to write some lyrics. I just want to use language. Language is such a beautiful, rich thing. It deserves to be challenged and pushed around and experimented with. So the downside is, though, I work with lots of different publishers, and two agents. So it's a little bit complicated. But I would say to anyone out there, don't let your publisher push you around. you know, this is your writing career, and go and have a go at something else, and see where it takes you, because that's, you know, that's part of life's journey.
I love that answer. So shall we go way back? You mentioned poems. How did you get into writing?
Writing full stop.
Writing
Just
full stop. Just your passion for language, seeing language as clay or something you can form
yeah.
and mold.
Well, I'm
And
a very,
yeah.
a very late starter. I'm certainly a late starter. So I wasn't published till I was in my 50s. So I was writing in my late 40s. You know, I was really behind, really behind everyone. But I just wasn't ready. I didn't have things to say. I didn't know how to say them. I didn't always want to be a writer. It sort of came on quite late. Which is, I think, good, because I just wasn't mature enough before that, and I was busy with children and things. So I started. I mean, I did write in my job, in my first. I've got a degree in English and history, so I did write then. My parents were writers. That's one of the things that put me off for so many years, was saying two writers, you know, barely scratching a living. And it was always so tenuous and so unpredictable. And I thought, I don't want that for my children. I don't want them living with that that sort of I guess a sort of frailty, really, isn't it? It's, you just, my parents never knew when the next check was coming in, and
Yeah.
you know, it's quite stressful. So I just took a normal job, and I worked in marketing communications and PR and things like that. So I wrote speeches for chief executives, and I wrote press releases, and I wrote lots of articles. They were about very dull things, but it meant that throughout my 20s and 30s, I was writing. I was writing every day, although it wasn't very exciting. But it also meant that I could put aside enough money that then, when I left, I was actually free to just try writing what I wanted to. So I didn't have to write for a crust, which I think is more difficult, because then when your publisher says you must write another book like this, you don't have any choice. You have a mortgage to pay and bills to pay. Whereas I'd squirreled away enough money to have a bit of freedom. And then I took a break to just be with my kids. I had 4 of them, and my dog. And that was when I started to think, gosh, this is lovely, but it's a little bit boring. And I stumbled across James Joyce's daughter. She was the subject of my first novel, and I just wanted to know more about her, and no one had written about her. So I just thought, well, I'll make some, you know, I'll just try and imagine myself into her life, and I'll create a fiction. So I wasn't writing under contract. I wasn't writing because I wanted to be published. I was just writing really to find out about a particular woman. And then when I finished, and I sat there, and it's taken me about 3 or 4 years, and I had a book, and I thought, this is really strange. What do I do with it? So I started entering it into competitions, and it won. It won a competition to be published. So it got published without me ever really thinking, oh, I'm going to be a writer, and I'm going to plot out my future career, and this is what I need to do. I didn't do any writing courses. I'd never been on a writing course. It all sort of happened. A sort of a mixture of serendipity and beginner's luck, really. But I did always read. I mean, I've read voraciously all my life, and I think that's probably as good as any creative writing course.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I'm going to ask you later about your top tips for NASA novelists, and that's basically one of them already. But something else you acquire with astonishing ease is agents, which many young writers or new writers sort of find the hardest thing to do. And you have, like, I don't even know how many on your website, like half a dozen or something like that, for America and for nonfiction and for fiction and for screenwriting. And it's fantastic. So what can you tell us about that?
Well, it's like my life would be easier if I just had one, but I have 2, and I adore them both. One for nonfiction, one for fiction, and then they have found me agents in America, for example. So, and they both have their own agents who are now my agents in America. So I've ended up now with just 4 for those 2 countries. But what I would say is that if you can have a little track record, so competitions, winning competitions. So even before I entered my novel, I had started to enter, while I was working on the novel, little short story competitions, just to see if I was, you know, any good. You know, was this really viable way of spending my time? So I would just send little short stories into little short story competitions, and every time I won or got shortlisted or longlisted, that was a real vote of confidence and a real, you know, that encouraged me to keep going. Otherwise, I think I would probably have done something else. So then I ended up with a CV that had all these competitions. You know, some of them were really tiny. I was probably the only person who entered. But then when an agent sees that, they quite like that, because that is a third party endorsement. The other thing that an agent likes is a good idea. So if your idea, whether that's for a novel or non-fiction, if that's a good idea, they will often take a punt on you on the basis of the idea alone and a sample of your writing. So
Yeah.
you know, and trying to find something new. Agents and publishers regularly say to me that people are just coming up with the same ideas, and what they really want is something that hasn't been done before.
Yeah, something new, but that fits in. And you do that so cleverly, because you take your experience, but then you go back and you look at artists like Sylvia Plath or Louise Bourgeois or Virginia Woolf and how they dealt with this with sleeplessness, now in the case of Sleepless. And that's such a clever concept you have developed. So it's really like marrying two worlds, which is always fantastic. So tell us a little bit about your writing day. Any must-haves?
Well, I suppose I should first of all say that I do spend quite a lot of my nights.
Here it is.
I still put them on like sleepless. So I spend quite a lot of time awake in the night. I mean, less so now, because I'm getting over it. But quite a lot of time I will lie and do a lot of plotting and sort of structuring while I'm just lying there. And then I will quite often get up and I will just write in a very, very unstructured way, because during the night, your brain does work slightly differently, and structuring things is not what the brain can do at night. But what the brain can do at night is delve around in places where it doesn't really go during the day. So I find the night, if anyone's awake in the night, I would say, don't just lie there. Don't just stick a podcast in your ears and toss and turn, but get your notebook out, light a candle, and just write your night page, you know, just call them night pages, and don't worry about it, and just write whatever comes, because in the morning when you go back to them, you will, I guarantee, find something there, even if it's just a little phrase that you would, words that you wouldn't have put together perhaps during the day. So you create quite a nice little bank of things that you can call on. But my day, I don't really have any rules. I have two rules actually. One is, as soon as I wake up in the morning, which is usually quite early, go outside and walk. So get movement and light as soon as you can, because that just sort of gets the brain awake. And then I normally work. So mornings are really my best time for doing, you know, for structuring things, logically, all the logical writing, working out what comes where. And then in the afternoon, I'll do a bit more sort of sleepy. And then I try in the evenings, I'll just do my admin or I'll read. And that's really as structured as it is. Not very structured, really.
So what is next for you? What are you working on at the moment?
Well, I've just finished book number 8. So I'm on deadline for that. And I've just handed my agent the first draft. And that is another walking book. It's about how landscape changes us. So when we, how we think when we're in the mountains compared to how we think when we're by the sea, compared to how our brain works when we're in a city. So it's 20 essays on different landscapes. So that's gone. And then I'm desperate to get back to fiction. But of course, I've now got all my non-fiction publishers, saying, can you do another one of those? And I just want to get back to fiction. So,
no, do another one about food. I absolutely love sort of the language of food. The book we met over or with, I don't know how to say it. So Annabel, that was fantastic, and we've already come to the 5 faves. So very quickly, please, what is your favorite movie?
An Angel at My Table.
Never heard of that one. I'll look it up. Which is your favorite book?
I think that's probably going to be Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte.
And music or score or song?
I think I'll have the score to the film called The Piano.
That is beautiful.
Yeah, Michael Nyman.
Yeah. Favorite food?
Middle Eastern.
And favorite travel destination?
Give me some mountains. Any mountain.
Walking anywhere.
Walking in some mountains, yes.
Okay, well, thanks for watching Everything All Right. My guest today was Annabel Abbs, and we spoke about her book Sleepless, Discovering the Power of the Night Self. Order it online or get it at your local independent bookstore. I am Ellen Alpsten. Subscribe to Everything All Right and watch us next week. Thank you so much, Annabel.
Thank you.